Some houses are remembered for what happened in them, and some are remembered for a story that can never quite be agreed upon. This is the tale of a farmhouse in Rhode Island, and of one family who lived there for 10 years. What you are about to hear is not presented as proven fact. It is two accounts of the same 10 years. What the family said happened, and what the famous investigators who came to help them claimed. You can decide for yourself. Come sit by the fire. In the winter of 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron moved into an old farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, with their 5 young daughters. It was a beautiful place, an old New England home on 8 acres of land. Roger was a traveling salesman, often away for days. And almost as soon as they arrived, according to the family, the house began to make itself known. The farmhouse was old, far older than the country around it. It had stood since the 1700s, and many families had lived and died within its walls. To the Perrons, at first, it was simply a home that needed work. But the daughters would later say the house never felt entirely empty, that from the very beginning, they had the sense of not being alone in its rooms. The first signs, the family said, were small. Brooms that went missing and turned up in strange places. Doors that opened on their own. Piles of dirt swept up, only to reappear. A voice, once, telling them to get out. Easy things to dismiss, one at a time. But according to the parents, they did not stop. They grew. And here is where the family's account becomes unusual. The eldest daughter, Andrea Perron, has always insisted that not every presence in the house was evil. Some, she said, were gentle, sorrowful figures in old-fashioned clothing, going quietly about their business, as if they had never left. Spirits, in her words, that range from the benign to the benevolent. Some, she felt, were almost kind. But there was one, the family said, that was not kind at all. A dark and hostile presence that seemed to grow stronger with the years. And its attention, according to the parents, fell above all on one person in the house. Not on the children, not on Roger, who was so often away, but on Carolyn, the mother, the heart of the home. Carolyn Perron, her daughters would later say, bore the worst of it. Over the years she grew exhausted, frightened, and worn down by things she could not explain. The family described cold spots, foul smells, and a feeling of being watched and pressed upon. Whatever was in that house, the parents believed, it had chosen her, and it did not intend to let her go. The phenomena, as the family described them, followed patterns. A smell of rotting flesh that came without warning. A chill that no fire could drive out. Strange sounds in the small hours of the morning. To the Perron daughters, growing up inside it, this was simply the texture of their childhood. But for their mother, they said, each year in the house cost her a little more. Word of the haunting spread, as such stories do, and eventually it reached 2 of the most famous paranormal investigators in America. Ed and Lorraine Warren, self-described demonologists, who had built a reputation on cases exactly like this one. They had heard of the Perrons from other researchers, and they offered to come and see the house for themselves. Lorraine Warren claimed to be clairvoyant, able to sense presences that others could not. In her account of the case, she said she knew the house was haunted the moment she walked into it. The Warrens set up their equipment, spoke with the family, and reached a conclusion of their own about what was tormenting Carolyn Perron, a conclusion that gave the entity a name. The Warrens claimed the house was haunted by the spirit of a woman named Bathsheba Sherman, a local figure from the 1800s whom, they said, had been a witch, and worse. But this is one of the sharpest points of dispute in the whole story, because in later years, historians, and Andrea Perron herself, came to believe that Bathsheba was wrongly accused, that she was likely no witch at all, but an ordinary woman who, in Andrea's words, simply copped the blame for everything evil. Even the villain of the tale is contested. What happened next is where the two accounts collide most violently. The Warrens, the family said, decided to hold a séance, gathering everyone around a table to make contact with whatever was in the house, and to confront it. Roger Perron was uneasy, but the séance went ahead by candlelight in the dark heart of the old farmhouse. Andrea Perron has said that she secretly watched what followed, and her account is chilling. Her mother, she said, began to speak in a language not of this world, in a voice that was not her own. Her chair, Andrea claimed, rose from the floor, and Carolyn was thrown across the room. Whether you believe it or not, it is the moment the family points to as the most terrifying of all. And it is also the moment the two sides split for good. Because in the family's telling, the Warrens' séance did not help. It made things worse. Roger Perron, furious and frightened for his wife, is said to have ordered the investigators out of his house. In the family's account, the famous demonologists were not the heroes of the story. They were guests who had made a dangerous situation more dangerous still. The Warrens left, but the Perrons stayed for 9 more years. They simply could not afford to leave. They endured winter after winter in the house, until at last, Andrea has said, her mother told her father she would not survive another one. In 1980, the family finally moved away to Georgia and left the old farmhouse behind them at last. So what really happened in that house? The honest answer is that we cannot know. The Warrens claimed a demonic witch. The family described a decade of torment, a spectrum of spirits, and a séance that did more harm than good. And the skeptics point out, fairly, that there is no hard proof of any of it, and that the Warrens were often accused of embellishing their cases. 3 accounts of the same 10 years that will never be reconciled. The house still stands in Rhode Island, and it still, quietly, keeps its secret. This has been the Dark Hearth.